Hello again to all. I'm here today in the Tier 10 German battleship, the Große Kurfürst. We're on the map Islands of Ice, and the mode is Domination. A fitting revisit since I believe last time we posted up in the GK we were on this same map in the same mode, but hopefully we can have a better showing than last. Now we're spawning here above sea cap as the easternmost battleship from my perspective, so things should be interesting. So first off, looking out, we have Montana, Ohio, Kurfürst, Yamato, Des Moines, Worcester, Zao, Moskva, Gearing, Shimakaze, so double DD, bunch of radar, less relevant for me of course because I'm a battleship. Only one Yamato, which is fortunate because I don't want to be overmatched with my 32mm plates. And surprisingly enough, no Kremlins at all in the matchmaking and only one Venetia. So this should be interesting. So the Tier 10 German battleship, the Große Kurfürst, culminates the line and is a bit of a mashup between the preceding Gneisenau, Kurfürst, and Bismarck, which have relatively small number of rifles with overmatching calibers, and the Scharnhorst, which has a relatively large number of rifles and no overmatch. She has a large number of rifles and overmatch caliber, finally. So she has a 12-gun setup in an ABXY setup, 4 triple turrets with 406mm rifles. You can of course mount the 420s, but I opt to use the 406s for their shorter base reload. I'm running reload module, so I have a reload of just about 25 seconds. AP alpha is 12,700, nothing to write home about, but it gets the job done. AG alpha is atrocious as always. German HE has a quarter pen going for it, but that's about it. Horrific alpha, pretty mediocre fire chance, and a Des Moines pops up. Des Moines has 27mm plate, which bounces 380, found on the Bismarck and Nyes, but I ain't no Bismarck or Nyes. Shimakaze pops up on my flank, which is definitely inconveniencing. Des Moines sets me on fire, I get him back for 6k. And let's see, it looks like we're only targeted by one, don't think he can shoot me anymore, so I am gonna damage control. Now remember, the Shimakaze could be running 12s or 20s. Most people run the 12s. Oh, that shot was wildly off, but he could be running the 20s, so do have to be wary. Gonna kite away for a little bit. I'm pretty much full broadside right now, expecting those shells to be for me. Enemy GK fires on me, but he straddles me for the most part, and my Worcester Hydro does catch most of those shells, or most of those torpedoes. He's in a spot of trouble. Look at the Worcester. Used to run spotter plane, but I've switched to fighter for a weekend anti-carrier shenanigans. Doesn't look like that Worcester's going to turn out, so let's get our first real broadside salvo of the game. You can see pretty wild dispersion, but the enemy GK is such a large target that we do at least clip him with 6 shells. Pretty disappointing salvo considering how broadside he is, but I'll take it. So as you can see, you have 12 rifles with overmatched caliber, which sounds great, but the big problem, of course, as with most German ships in this game, or most German battleships that is that you pay for being able to access all of your rifles by having horrific gun angles. Now I am kiting slightly away, the rearward angles are superior by a fair bit to the forward angles. But overall, the Große Kurfürst, in spite of having German armor and German hit point pool, does lack a bit of durability because she has to turn very significantly broadside in order to bring her weapons to bear. Which means that when you angle properly, which is something you need to do as a German, you do make yourself vulnerable. Mr. Border sliding, Des Moines contesting the cap of course. He's also kiting away, so I'm gonna try and overmatch his 25mm stern rather than spend my armor piercing into that angled GK. He doesn't look that angled in my viewfinder, but you can see from the minimap that he's actually quite significantly angled. Look, you can see that German dispersion spreading around the booster at range. So of course, GK is a German battleship, so we still have German dispersion. And German dispersion at range is quite inferior to essentially everything. In addition, she carries the 1.8 Sigma that hampers all German tech tree battleships. So not the most accurate beast. My team in the other side, not even on the other side, my team in the middle, I guess, and my Z-52 seem to have found a way to get themselves killed. Which is going to make this a bit ugly, because now we're at a rather large ship deficit with nothing to show for it. There's a half HP Des Moines, which I probably should have shot, but I wasn't paying attention. I am going to risk showing broadside to this entire battleship cluster in order to bring my guns online. But someone does dispatch him, thankfully, and we finally trade a kill back. This Yamato is pushing in. No, he overmatches me, I don't overmatch him, but I am going to try and get onto his side. He's adjusting his angle as he comes in, unfortunately. No real AP threats. There's a GK, which I could potentially punish, but I do actually want to get rid of this Yamato. He's definitely overextended. It's going to take my push power. Now remember, there is a Shimakaze somewhere to our south, but I'm being screened off by the rest of my team, or at least that's the idea. Note my horrific gun angles. Already giving a fair bit of broadside here, easily allowing him to pen me. Probably too greedy to fire with all 12 of my rifles. Gonna switch to high explosive. Now, as I mentioned, German high explosive. Not great, but you do what you gotta do. Now, secondary battery range without buffing it with much more than a secondary flag is 9.7. So I'm gonna try and close the range, make use of my secondaries. I do have the Gneisenau secondaries, the 127mm dual-purpose guns. So you can see that from both my base range and my 6km AA range. Firing off high explosive, just looking for a fire here as I close in, but you can see the damage itself is rather piss poor. Still broadsiding, well, not really broadsiding the GK, and I'm in cover now. So I'm gonna take my time and push in. Can't do too much here, so I'm just going for multiple fires in multiple sections. Yamato is essentially ignoring me. We're gonna pressure him because he's pushed in a bit too far. And then we're gonna find whatever's left of his team. Secondaries going off very, very slowly. The secondaries themselves, while being quite good, don't have the best of angles. He dies, switch back to armor piercing, begin turning my turrets. For the GK, we are about to pop out. Only gonna have my front guns for the first salvo. And they're not even going to be ready for when we pop, but we'll do our best to try for, at this point, what looks like the booster since the GK has turned in. My Montana drops, we continue to hold a slight disadvantage due to having a cap disadvantage, but we did at least equalize the ship scores, taking a pot shot at the booster with my front guns. You can see here, the 406 shells are relatively floaty, and at range they do kind of spray all over the place. I'm close into secondary range, but continue to send overmatching 406 shells at the booster. He opens up on me, but I'm relatively untouched, so I'm more than happy to trade openly with him, leading, assuming he's gonna continue straight away from me. GK is not even looking at me, but he is about to make a decisive decision. He's gonna have to turn soon if he wants to disengage. Looks like the shimmy's just south of me, or has been just south of me at some point. And as he makes that decision to turn, we can punish 20,000 into the side by 5 penetrations. As a German battleship, I do of course have turtleback. Can't be citadelled at close range, and well, he is me, so he can't be citadelled at close range either. Shell's doing a good job of basically hitting nothing, but it's quite alright. There's almost no way this booster is going to kill us unless he does this for an extended period of time. And I think it would take some phenomenally bad luck for that to happen, so he keeps firing open water like this instead of disengaging. Eventually, Gonna get some shells to stick, and there you go. Right into the citadel. GK pops his Hydro. This is of course a feature of high-tier German battleships. In this case, the GK has the 6-kilometer Hydro, the full-on, full-strength Hydro. I am very close to a Moskva. Now, Moskva's a fairly sturdy Russian cruiser, but I should be right on his side if he's sitting there. Which is bad news bears for him, because I'm close enough that my dispersion is not gonna fuck with me. So, yeah, I don't know what he was thinking. He knew I was coming. He did spot me. And I was fighting earlier. Haven't had to pop my Hydro at all, though, because the Shimakaze more or less has been chased off to the border. He hasn't even been torping the Republic as far as I'm concerned. Don't know why my daring's not capturing B. What the fuck is this? But anyway, it is the weekend, so who knows? Maybe he knows something I don't. Maybe he's secretly a genius. We do find the Ohio. Now the Ohio is probably secondary spec. That would be my guess. He's a Montana hull with 457s that are found in the Georgia. Zao pops up. Ohio is, however, broadsiding, and while the Montana is a sturdy hull, you still don't want to broadside with it even though it has the waterline citadel. Now at this range, unlike the Georgia, he has 30 kilometers, or 30 knots of speed. At this range, you can see my dispersion's fairly wonky, unlike that nice, relatively even salvo. You can see how much broadside I have to give just to get my rear guns online, so much that I'm risking beaching myself. I'm gonna have to slow down in order to tighten my turn. One citadel, so I'm using the 4.6 as the lighter shell, but all high-tier battleships can pretty much citadel each other at most ranges, and while I'm relatively immune to Ohio citadels, thanks to my turtleback, he is not immune to me. So he's turning out towards to dodge. My guns are reloading, and those torpedoes will keep him nice and lined up, which means I'll have an opportunity to kill him twice. So first time I miss, Repub cleans him up instead. And second time, well, I didn't get the second time because, again, as I mentioned, the horrific gun angles meant that I never got those guns off. A lot of people supporting those, I think, Twitch supporter camos. You can see here the shells are quite fast, unlike some of the floatier shells that you might find on Americans or British. Shimmy has effed off, shall we say. Really not sure where he is. Not concerned at all. And I don't know. This is what I would call an okay game. Not very exciting though. No real fighting whatsoever, just pushing into people who were not the most intelligent. However, we are going to clean this up. But anyhow, while we wait for this match to clean up, we can go over some of the GK's features. So the Großer Kurfürst, German battleship, high HP pool. This used to in fact be the highest until the introduction of the Kremlin, which has since taken that crown from her, which is unfortunate. Speed-wise, she's pretty standard, does a very standard 30 knots. Fairly common for high-tier battleships. Gun range-wise, the range is short, 20.6 right now. This is with reload module. If you mount legendary module, which shaves down range at to give you a little better reload, then, okay, whoever's guessing, you're not even close, by the way. If you mount legendary module, which improves your reload on secondaries and main battery, then you shave that range even further. And as a result, even though I don't have main battery, even though I own the legendary module, I don't mount it, and instead I just mount main battery mod 1. Now you might think that 20.6 is not too bad, and then you can mount a spotter plane. But going down to the 19 kilometers that the legendary mod forces you to go down to is quite crippling, especially on high tier maps. You'll note that even with my 20 kilometers of range, if I sit in the dead center of the map, I can't really cover all 3 caps. And that's from the center of the map. And ships like a Yamato or even a Republic will outrange you by something like 4 or 6 kilometers. And there are really scenarios where you just might never be able to catch up with someone and engage them. Additionally, it's not as relevant in randoms. I think Legendary mod GK is perfectly fine for randoms if you want to run it, especially if you do take spotter plane instead of fighter plane. But for competitive, you want to get those cross-map plays, especially in the current Clan War season, for example, where you have 2 battleships allowed and you can generate that battleship crossfire if you so choose. Having range to actually reach across the entirety of those big high-tier maps is extremely important. Looks like these torpedoes are for me. I'm gonna pop my Hydro very, very late, even though these are spotted in case there's any more of these. Looks like there aren't. I know the shimmy's inside the cap, but anyhow, Hydroacoustic, something we probably should have been talking about earlier. High-tier German battleships get access to it starting at the Bismarck. Bismarck has 4.4. Oh, sorry, it's been normalized. Bismarck has the 5-kilometer Hydro that cruisers have, but GK and FDG have the 6 km Hydro of high-tier German cruisers and battleships. This spots torpedoes at 3.5 kilometers and ships at 6 kilometers. So this makes GK particularly good at pushing out GDs in smoke and also defending herself against torpedoes. However, don't make the mistake of thinking Hydroacoustic will actually save you. Spotting torpedoes at only 3.5 kilometers means that even though you spot them that far out, you can't necessarily react. Note how large the GK is. And her size and large turning circle and sluggish rudder shift mean that even if you do spot torpedoes at the edge of Hydro, if that's when you start reacting, you're not going to be able to react in time and you're going to still take some of them. This is why you have to pay attention to where destroyers are and start reacting approximately when you think the destroyer has fired upon you. And the Hydro just acts as a bit of a safety net so that you steer and finish the maneuvers correctly. Anyhow, pretty unimpressive game at 1800. Most of it came from a couple of stray cruisers, some battleship damage as well. Okay, I guess it's actually mostly battleship damage. But as you saw, almost all of it is high explosive damage. Or, not high explosive, but armor piercing damage. The high explosive we did use against the Yamato was fairly pathetic, and we did more damage from fires than high explosive in the end. Since that wasn't quite what we wanted, let's throw it back into the matchmaker and see if we can get something a little more impressive, where I can show off some of the strengths of the GK in terms of using her armor to actually push instead of being left unopposed on a flank. You'll excuse me as I grab a bite to eat. Anyhow, we're in a 8 to 10 game this time. We're on the map the Atlantic. We're spawning below sea. It's a carrier game, but thankfully it's just a tier 8 carrier. However, the enemy carrier is an Enterprise, which is notable because it's an American carrier with armor-piercing dive bombers. Now, armor-piercing dive bombers are extremely potent against all German battleships. They're basically very well protected by that turtleback against horizontal fire, so fire coming in at basically shells. But any vertical fire, which is essentially what an armor-piercing bomb is, it's a shell dropped from straight above, plunges right through that armor scheme into the citadel and easily detonates. So German battleships tend to take a lot of citadel damage from armor-piercing dive bombers, and AA isn't great. Now the Gneisenau secondaries at tier 7 are fairly impressive for their tier, and the GK has the same secondaries at tier 10. However, it only has an extra, I believe, Gneisenau has, what, 11 secondaries total, so she has 5 per side. And GK has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 per side, so 14. So she has an improvement of 3 guns, but she's moved 3 tiers higher, so as you can imagine, GK's AA is not considered to be particularly impressive. As for armor, just like all German battleships in the game, she has a distributed armor scheme, unlike the all-or-nothing schemes of many other lines of other nations. So she has the 32mm extremities, just like all high-tier battleships, but once you get past the extremities, you get rakes of 50 and 60mm armored plates, and her central deck is 50mm, which allows you to resist a large amount of high explosive, and also armor piercing as long as you angle. Of course, with the introduction of high explosive dive bombers, and certain special, more specific builds such as IFHE Henry and IFHE Yoshino, you are a little less protected than you used to be. Nevertheless, as an enormous amount of ping attempts to shaft me, I'm gonna take a shot at this Z-23 with my teammates and help to delete him, hopefully. He's inside my secondary range too, so hopefully those can do something about him. Des Moines finishes him off. Nicely played. Hopefully ping cooperates, so broadside Alaska. Now at range, my performance is unimpressive. But a broadside Alaska and broadside Des Moines are certainly quite tasty. Now you can see, just even from just following the shells, that the spread's pretty ugly, but we do get a decent salvo at range, even though it's not our specialty. We're gonna push in at this point. It looks like a large force in the middle, and then a large force up here as well, but we've eliminated some of that force up top. Looks like they have a Montana, that Bismarck, and the Amalfi. Maybe the Enterprise, and support fire from those cruisers in the middle, if they manage to reach us. Now that Des Moines is over here, but my intent is to focus down this Bismarck. Note, just this last game, the poor gun angles preventing us from bringing all 6 to bear. Bismarck foolishly wandering out into the open. I don't want to get counter-punished after I punish him with those pens. Remember that German turtleback. I would like to launch my fighter and also avoid any potential rams, because launch the fighter because of the Enterprise, avoid ram because, well, this guy's already dead. He should know that, or recognize that, and attempt to go for the ram. I would like for that not to happen, though. Ricochetation shells off his bow. You can see that auto bounce angle. I'm just going to give him my broadside, because I don't want to get rammed. It's going to be a bit difficult to dodge ram with this ping, but it's quite alright. At this point, we're close enough that we've essentially dodged, so I'm just going to fire my shells into his superstructure, and with the heel ticking through, tanking the fire, we will dispatch him with some help. Probably should have popped my Hydro a little earlier. Could have seen this Venetia's or Amalfi's torpedo run coming, but it's alright. The Des Moines and my other allies will finish him off for me, making a full turn in front of a Montana, but as I said, as I said, we have the turtleback, so I'm not too concerned about that. I'm gonna take 2 torpedoes, sadly, and a bit of a beating from this Montana. Ow, ow, ow. But I got plenty of HP. And turtleback armor. At this point, I'm gonna drop that fighter. Those AP dive bombers are almost certainly for me. Okay, we're gonna lag. Not fire into the right spot. Still get a citadel, thankfully. Oh, and I sectored too early. Just gonna withdraw from this trade. Not interested in trading up close and personal. The Montana has far superior gun angles to me, so I'm just gonna present my rear to him and wait for my rear guns to load. Hopefully I can get a couple seconds without too much ping to actually fire these shells properly. You see there the waterline citadel of the Montana protecting him from taking too many. And while it'd be nice to bring my other guns online, I don't want to take any additional damage. I'd rather he shoot at this Cleveland beside me or the North Carolina. So I'm just going to stay nice and angled. And only when I think he's going to die am I going to correct my angle and bring my guns online. Another citadel. Quick brawly game here. Before he gets away, gonna bring my front guns online, and we do clap him. Scraping the island with my enormous turning circle. There's that Des Moines we shot at earlier. At the very edge of my range on this big high tier map, and I'm stuck. Well, okay, I'm not stuck. Let's move. Soyuz kills him. And we're up a cap and up a kill. After some quick, brutal brawling. Now, it definitely could have been handled quite a bit more smoothly. Greeting a bit on my consumables there, as you saw. Held my Hydroacoustic a bit too long. Almost got jumped. But at least the Enterprise is leaving us alone. He's flying through a screen of my allies, so I'm hard to hit since he's on this side of me. Cyclone's coming in, however, that's going to prolong this game. And at this point, I'm just going to head down to A in the most efficient means possible. Since I made that big turn and had that duel, then I have to go this way, which is unfortunate because it's going to deny me any access to this Yoshino, realistically. I don't have a spotter plane this game, and a Cyclone's kicking in. I really wish this frame stutter would stop. This is a pretty shitty ping game, so hopefully it doesn't look too ugly. Not sure why it's like this, because last game certainly wasn't. But internet connection can be fickle. Looks like kids inside of B. But it's fine, we'll get there eventually, and I have plenty of radar cruisers in the vicinity. Now, as I get ready to re-engage the enemy, I note the force here and the force here. So I'm turning my turrets because I expect if I engage them to have to turn in towards the cap, rather than turn out toward the border. So we pre-turn our guns, and we'll get ready for combat. I was about to enter our range, but we're in Cyclone, so we're not going to see him for quite a while. Already racked up quite a total, used 2 of our heals, but we're at close to the cap of our healable HP thanks to taking some amount of unhealable damage from the torpedoes striking us. Torpedoes of course do count as citadel damage. Now I have a standard heal, no British super heal or anything special like that, standard cooldown as well. But thanks to my high hit point pool, it does heal quite a bit. And you do end up being quite the chunky battleship. That turtleback there, as you saw, showing off the impressive durability, but also at the same time that duel with the Montana also showed off my horrific gun angles, which can make getting close into brawl quite tricky because you don't want to take a huge amount of pen damage. The team is apparently waiting on the border of B. They want to come in. They want the enemy to come in, which is fine, but we should take back B first. So rather than going toward these guys by myself, I would like for us to just push together into B. People complaining. Enterprise harassing the Soyuz and NCAL. And there's the Yoshino inside the cap, which is fairly risky. So since the Yoshino is there, and I would like not to become torpedo food, he can actually pre-torp me because he gets vision of minimap in storm. So I'm gonna pop my Hydroacoustic. And lo and behold, we catch the kid on the edge of our Hydro 2. Having been caught in my hydro, it appears to make the choice to open up. Yoshino's still well outside of my range, therefore I will give him a blast of the main gun. Nope, never mind. Gonna go for the heavier torpedo threat first, especially because I have a nice broadside angle on the Yoshino. Okay, someone else blasts him. Guess I should have blasted the kid. Do hit him once, trying to catch him in my hydro, but I didn't quite get the right turn because I was trying to get greedy and bring all 12 of my guns to bear onto the Yoshino, and as a result, I'm scraping against the side of this bloody island. GK, of course, again demonstrating that her enormous bulk does come with some costs, shall we say. Now with the Yoshino and, well, the kid shortly to be dispatched, I assume, I'm gonna touch him with the hydros soon. He is moving, but staying close enough to fire in out of the smoke means that he can't be that far. I have a fighter, and there are APDBs, but there's so many of my allies here that I don't anticipate having to really activate the fighter. Just flying through all these high tier ships would spell doom to a tier 8 carrier like the Enterprise, in spite of his OP-ness, shall we say. He is still just a tier 8 carrier with tier 7 planes. So we have cap control, so we could just sit here and wait. Or we could even just push through today, but because I want to show off the fighting prowess of the GK if ping allows, I kind of want to just wait. Our NCAL separates from the pack for some reason. Not sure what I'm supposed to do here. So there's an Amagi, GK, and an Iowa. So as I'm outlining in the chat, their play is probably just to push up as a unit towards B or C. So we just need to stay together. Oh, okay. So we got new information about where these guys are. And oh, this Ibuki is hard fucked because he's beached against me. And this is gonna be a brawl. Now Magi also has a soft turtleback. He dies, obviously. He got caught out by 3 battleships. And we're in for a fight. So the moment I take any large amount of damage, I'm gonna heal. Fire will prompt a heal immediately as well, because I'm not gonna use all my heals otherwise. Gonna avoid the GK. Double fire is unfortunately gonna force me to damage control. Looking for the Iowa, but there's kind of a lot of other ship to go through. Uh-oh, they're dispatching my allies real quick. Again, shooting through the superstructure of the GK, who's kind of keeping me from accessing the Iowa. Rear guns for the Amagi. That's one. Cyclone's pretty shit. Iowa has failed to repair his engine. Secondaries on that guy. Main battery on Iowa. Aim below the top turret. That guy gets a quick Toledo ram. He fixed his engine, or it fixed itself. He's up close against a German battleship. Okay, you saw my shells clip the fucking GK's corpse there. Hopefully I can get my front guns online, constantly bringing them to bear. Nope, no such luck. Let's switch my secondaries. Okay, gonna try again to switch my secondaries. firing into the superstructure this time. And only now do I switch over. Enterprise coming in now, I'm pretty low. Remember, I popped a heal at the beginning of the fight, while my heal's back on cooldown thanks to premium consumables. Well, Hydra's still running, so we have some defense, and I want that Enterprise. Okay, so I'm gonna do something a bit troll, but my damage record all time right now is just about 260,000. And I'm pretty close, and I want to try and beat it. I haven't beaten this damage record for several years, I would say. So I really want to push through it. I know it's kind of selfish. But I'm not that concerned about a kid. And I mean, the rest of my team can clean this up even if I kill myself. A hard stop. We saw his torpedo tubes recently. See how far up we can push this damage ceiling. If I get all of the HP on this guy, I'm gonna be real happy. It's pretty unlikely though, because I'm kind of sharing. But it'll be a new damage record already, 280. GK dispersion kind of showing up now. He's kind of bowing now, so I have minimal cross section to shoot at. Continuing to close the range on him, trying for that juicy pen damage, but ooh, you can see that Enterprise armor ricocheting my shells because of the oblique angle. So I'm now oblique enough where I cannot go for belt. I instead have to punch him in the face. Yeah, there's probably torpedoes coming, but they're Benson torpedoes and I'm a GK. Should probably still sector. 290, can I break 300,000? There's a Benson torpedo, I don't really give a flying fuck. Damage control is a bit risky, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Trying to get the shells to basically hit in the nose of the Enterprise as he reverses away from me. And there's my Kraken unleashed, High Cal, Confederate, and 300,000 damage with a minute to go. DD shows up. Enterprise coming to try and end my day. Enterprise can hit for upwards of 30,000 damage per strikes, by the way, so do be careful, and in spite of the ping, we did manage to have a fantastic game. And I'm very, very happy to finally move my damage record from the tier 7 Scharnhorst at 265,000 to 301,000. Pretty decent game, 301,000 damage, as I mentioned, 110 shells, 35 overpens, 54 pens, 11 ricochets, 9 torpedo ball hits, and 1 non-pen, not too bad, 10 planes shot down by hull, 7 incaps, 5 kills, 1 fire from secondaries, all AP this time, remember, 6 citadels, 1 assisted capture, 230 secondary hits, and 2 planes interdicted by fighters. Got some secondary mission, and of course, Dreadnought, Confed, High Cal, Kraken. Pretty damn good BB awards. Only 2,680 base experience, but you take what you take. No, it's mostly battleship damage, but you gotta shoot battleships if you want to get that high, right? So a lot of the Montana that I brawled, a lot of the Iowa that kind of just sat there, most of the Enterprise, Bismarck as well, Amalgi as well, GK as well. That Des Moines we opened up on early, and about half the HP on the kid. Probably should have had more HP on the kid, but as you saw there, I did a bit of greeting. But yeah, that was a pretty good game to show off the GK. Thank you for the comps. I feel like I deserved it. But anyhow, as I was mentioning, distributed armor scheme. German battleship, distributed armor scheme. So, 32mm extremity. Well, 32mm extremity is kind of an interesting way of putting it. Now, on the rear, you have this little bit, this tiny little stern section, 32. And then you have this tiny little bow section, 32. And then this tiny little upper bow strip, 32, but beneath it, you have the 60mm icebreaker, and behind that, the 120mm cheek, and then behind the 32mm bow section, you have 50mm fore deck, and then 50mm main deck. And then again at the stern, 32, but then 50, and then into the main deck. The rear strip as well, 120, and look how far back it extends. It's basically the whole fucking ship. So this is why the GK is so tanky against armor piercing. However, again, as with the Gneisenau and Scharnhorst, you have this upper belt of 150 and the main belt of 380. Now 380 is not even that particularly thick for a main belt, but the important part is the upper belt of 150. So 150 is a pretty thin belt, so most high tier cruisers with 8-inch guns and larger, and most battleships will easily not overpen it, but penetrate 150. Now they can't citadel you since the German battleship, of course, has that turtleback. If I go here, you can see that turtleback over the actual citadel. These sloped strips of armor preventing citadels at close to medium ranges. However, that does mean that shells will hit into this 150mm armor strip, fuse on that 150mm strip because it's so thick, instead of overpenning through as they would with 32mm plate as found on, say, a Montana or something. And so you get full pens. So that Montana, if you remember that I dueled earlier on in the initial cap contest, the reason I turned away and decided to only fight him with 12 guns, or 6 guns rather than all 12, is because if I sat and stood alongside him, yes, I can't be citadeled, but I take massive amounts of pen damage. And if you recall, I have really horrific gun angles, right? So to get all 12 guns to bear, I have to angle something like this. But the Montana has actually good gun angles and 12 rifles of its own, which have even higher shell alpha than mine. My AP shells are pretty middling for as far as 406 shells go. So he can actually fire all 12 of his rifles angled just about like this, maybe even a little better. And what this means is that if we duel and I'm firing 12 rifles like this, and he's angled and firing 12 rifles like this, he's going to be slapping me for 20 to 30k per salvo with pure pen damage, and I'm going to shoot back and probably pen him for maybe 12k, 8k, because he's going to be mostly angled, right? So a good amount of my shells are going to bounce off him if I attempt to trade into his belt. And so I'll actually end up losing the trade. Now he did sail broadside like a moron, but I didn't want to take any return damage and I wanted to just slowly kill him. So instead, I just gave him my butt and I just shot at him with my rear rifles and slowly worked him down. Just to go over the modules. Okay, I was confused for a second, but we'll get back to that later. Main armaments. Now, you can secondary spec GK, some people do, but I prefer to go with the bread and butter of the ship, the 12 406mm rifles. So main armaments 1, and then tankiness. Secondary battery, just for a bit of extra range. You can run aiming systems, but I found that I don't notice any difference between having aiming systems and not having aiming systems of GK dispersion, so do what you like, and this gives you a bit of extra utility to use your secondaries as fire starters. Tankiness, concealment, and lastly reload. So I do have the legendary module, and if I hover here, you'll see that, so main battery mod gives 12% reload time at the cost of 13% traverse. So enhanced main armaments, the legendary module gives 15% main battery reload, so that's 3% improved, and an additional 15% secondary at the cost of 7% traverse, so you get 5% back, and 8% firing range. And 8% of your firing range of, what is it, like 20 point something? Where is my range? Of 20.6, so 8% of 20.6 is just under 2 kilometers. So you should drop down to just about 19 kilometers, which is tiny, tiny, tiny. Consumable wise, as I mentioned, it's just standard, everything standard: heal, repair party, damage control, and then fighter or spotter. In competitive, you run spotter. For randoms, I run fighter. It is occasionally useful. And then captain build wise, a very standard, very standard battleship build. One of the safest there is. Now lately I've been seeing a lot of people on some other battleships run, instead of basics of survivability, they run Jack of all trades plus expert loader, but German HE is awful, 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 as I mentioned. It has pretty shit fire chance. It's, what is it, 38? Yeah, so it has pretty awful fire chance at 38% per shell, and 4800 HE alpha, which means you really don't want to be using it that much. Yes, you will switch to HE anyway for destroyers when the opportunities arise, but you really reach for that HE much less than you would on, say, some Japanese battleships or even French battleships, so I don't bother with that Jack of all trades plus expert loader thing. Instead, I go for priority target, into adrenaline rush, into basics, into fire prevention, back into concealment expert, into superintendent, and then finally expert marksman. The turret traverse on German ships is pretty decent, but having expert marksman definitely helps a lot. And yeah, this is my preferred GK build, just full tankiness so that you can get in through those big brawls like the one I just had at the end. So that was the Grosser Kurfürst. Pretty exciting. I hope the lag wasn't too horrific for you to experience. Certainly it was annoying for me, but tolerable. But this is the GK. She's seen some better days. The meta hasn't favored her very nicely, but she does have her strong points. She's very well armored, and if the situation happens so that you can get in there and brawl, she certainly is still the queen of brawling. I hope you enjoyed. Cheers.